when approaching Henry Hathaway's The Desert Fox, a 1951 war film that traces the rise and fall of German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, one is immediately struck by the paradox at its heart. Here is a Hollywood production, released just 6 years after the end of the Second World War, which takes as its protagonist not a British or American soldier, but a high-ranking general of the defeated Wehrmacht. That the film dares to humanize Rommel, played with quiet gravitas by James Mason, while simultaneously reflecting the Allied perspective, makes it both a fascinating piece of cinema and a historical curiosity. To review it today requires not just an assessment of its performances, cinematography, and direction, but also a reckoning with the ways in which popular culture chooses its heroes and villains in the aftermath of war. The film opens with a sense of authority, framing itself not as a conventional war picture but almost as a semi-documentary. The narrator, real-life war correspondent Desmond Young, whose own biography of Rommel inspired the screenplay, establishes the tone of sober respect. This is not a battlefield spectacle with rousing charges and explosions filling every reel. Instead, it is a character study, a portrait of a man whose reputation was so formidable among his enemies that even those who fought him could not help but admire his tactical brilliance. The very title, The Desert Fox, invokes the mythology that surrounded Rommel during his North African campaigns, where his ability to outmaneuver numerically superior British forces earned him both fear and reluctant admiration. James Mason's performance is the anchor of the film, and it is impossible to overstate how deftly he walks the line between portraying Rommel as a loyal soldier of Germany and as a man increasingly disillusioned with Hitler's leadership. Mason avoids melodrama. Instead, he conveys Rommel's inner conflict through subtle shifts in expression, through a reserved dignity that suggests a soldier caught between duty and conscience. In early scenes, when Rommel defies Hitler's orders to continue futile defenses in North Africa, Mason communicates a man who values the lives of his troops over the vanity of his Führer. His Rommel is pragmatic, not fanatical, and in that distinction the film carves out its controversial sympathy. One of the most interesting qualities of The Desert Fox is its restraint. Hathaway does not fill the screen with combat spectacle. Instead, many of the battles occur off-screen, conveyed through dispatches, discussions, and aftermath. What we see are war rooms, tense conversations, and the psychological burdens of command. This choice reflects both the modest budget of the production and its thematic priorities. The film is less about sandstorms and tank columns and more about conscience, loyalty, and the terrible choices faced by men in power during a world war. The viewer must imagine the scale of Rommel's campaigns, while the camera lingers on faces, on voices, on silences heavy with consequence. It is in the portrayal of Rommel's disillusionment with Hitler that the film becomes particularly bold for its time. By 1951, audiences in Britain and America were accustomed to cinematic portrayals of Nazis as caricatures, uniformed villains, sneering brutes, symbols of evil. In contrast, The Desert Fox presents Hitler, played with chilling ferocity by Luther Adler, as a tyrant but not a cartoon. Adler's performance captures the manic intensity and irrational stubbornness of the dictator, and in scenes opposite Mason, we witness not only the clash of personalities but also the tragedy of a professional soldier forced into confrontation with a leader who no longer listens to reason. The contrast is stark. Rommel is calm, rational, concerned with the realities of war. Hitler is delusional, clinging to fantasies of total victory long after the tide has turned. The tension between these two figures fuels the narrative, but it also reflects a broader post-war discourse. By portraying Rommel as a man opposed to Hitler's worst excesses, the film taps into a mid-century desire to separate the good German soldier from the Nazi regime. This was politically convenient during the early Cold War, when West Germany was being rehabilitated as an ally against the Soviet Union. In this light, The Desert Fox is more than a character study. It is a cultural artifact of its moment, shaping Western perceptions of Germany through the figure of Rommel, who could be celebrated as an honorable adversary rather than condemned as a war criminal. The film's climax builds toward Rommel's involvement in the July 20th plot against Hitler, the failed conspiracy that nearly assassinated the dictator. Hathaway stages these scenes with a quiet inevitability, emphasizing Rommel's internal struggle rather than grandiose suspense. We see him drawn into conversations with conspirators, weighing his duty to his country against his oath as a soldier. When the Gestapo finally uncovers his role, the film depicts his forced suicide with an understated tragedy. The camera does not linger on death but instead on the silent dignity of a man who realizes his fate. Mason delivers this sequence with remarkable restraint, making Rommel's end all the more haunting for its lack of spectacle. From a technical standpoint, The Desert Fox is not a flashy film, but its craftsmanship is steady and effective. Hathaway directs with a steady hand, preferring clean compositions and deliberate pacing over stylistic flourishes. The cinematography by Norbert Bodin is crisp, using shadows and interiors to highlight the moral ambiguities of its characters. The score by Richard Edinsel avoids bombast. Instead, it underscores the melancholy of the narrative, lending an elegiac tone to Rommel's downfall. The production design, though modest, convincingly recreates the war rooms and German settings, even if the North African battlefields are more suggested than shown. What gives the film its lasting impact, however, is not spectacle but perspective. In humanizing Rommel, The Desert Fox raises questions about the nature of heroism and villainy in wartime. Is Rommel to be admired as a soldier who opposed Hitler, or condemned for serving the regime in the first place? The film leans toward admiration, presenting him as a tragic figure, a man of principle caught in a doomed cause. Critics at the time were divided. Some praised the film for its moral complexity, while others accused it of whitewashing the crimes of the German military. In retrospect, both responses are valid. Rommel's historical record is complex, and the film simplifies his role in ways that reflect the politics of its era more than the ambiguities of history. James Mason's portrayal was so effective that he reprised Rommel in the follow-up film The Desert Rats, 1953, which focused on Australian and British troops fighting in North Africa. There, Mason's Rommel is seen more through the eyes of his adversaries, yet still retains the aura of respect cultivated in The Desert Fox. This continuity demonstrates how powerful Mason's performance was in shaping the cinematic image of Rommel for generations of viewers. Indeed, many who know little about the historical figure may carry Mason's dignified interpretation as their primary impression. Rewatching The Desert Fox today, one is struck by its economy of storytelling. At just over 90 minutes, it is concise yet rich in implication. Every scene serves to advance the portrait of Rommel as a man increasingly alienated from the regime he served. There are no digressions into comic relief or side plots. The focus is relentlessly on character and conscience. This lean structure enhances the film's impact, giving it the feel of a morality play staged against the backdrop of global conflict. The film also invites reflection on the nature of propaganda and memory. Was The Desert Fox an attempt to rehabilitate the German military for Cold War purposes? Was it an honest attempt to grapple with the humanity of a formidable adversary? Or was it simply a dramatization of Young's biography, filtered through Hollywood's penchant for clear heroes and tragic endings? The answer is likely all three. What matters for the viewer is the awareness that cinema does not merely reflect history, it shapes the way history is remembered. In giving Rommel a sympathetic portrayal, the film influenced public memory of the war, emphasizing narratives of honor and resistance rather than complicity and atrocity. And yet, beyond politics, there remains the power of performance. James Mason's Rommel is compelling not just because of what he represents historically but because of how he is embodied on screen. Mason brings an intellectual seriousness, a stoic restraint, and a quiet sadness that make Rommel's story resonate. His gestures are minimal, his delivery calm, yet he commands the screen. It is this human core, this sense of a man grappling with impossible choices, that ensures the film's continued interest, even decades after its release. In the end, The Desert Fox is not a conventional war film, nor is it a sweeping epic. It is a subdued, thoughtful drama that dares to explore the conscience of an enemy general. Its legacy is complicated, bound up in the politics of its time, yet its artistic achievement lies in its ability to humanize without entirely absolving. Watching it today requires both appreciation and skepticism, appreciation for its performances, its narrative economy, and its moral seriousness, skepticism for its simplifications and its role in reshaping the memory of the war for post-war audiences. Ultimately, the film endures as both a cinematic achievement and a cultural document. It reminds us that cinema is never just entertainment, it is also interpretation, memory, and sometimes myth. By choosing to tell Rommel's story in 1951, Hollywood was not only crafting a film but also participating in the shaping of history itself. For better or worse, The Desert Fox ensures that Rommel remains etched in popular imagination not merely as a German general, but as a tragic figure caught in the storm of history, a man remembered as much for his conscience as for his campaigns.